So San Francisco's drug problem is absolutely out of control. We've seen the videos, we've seen the clips. Open-air drug markets are the norm in this left-wing city, which is actually the city that is suffering the most from population decline since the George Floyd riots. In fact, if you were to mark them down from 2020 of July to 2022 of July, they have lost about 7% of their population. Now, this is due in combination, because there's always a combination of factors, to their extreme lockdowns and to the fact that it's high cost of living, and when people got to work remote, they decided they didn't want to pay that high cost of living and these other factors, but the quality of life problems clearly and obviously are having a huge impact on San Francisco. We just did a story not too long ago about how San Francisco businesses that should be viable by all accounts ended up churning over their properties to the lenders because they don't have faith in the city's ability to recover. And London Breed, to her credit, in this very narrow circumstance, is trying to address the problem a little bit. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over on my website, actualjusticewarrior.com/join. You can get early access to videos on the secret video page.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to everyone who's listening to the podcast version of this on Apple, Spotify, and Google's podcasting platform.
Tensions are running high on the streets of the Tenderloin. Police now arresting drug users.
With the police presence, it makes everybody pissed off.
So first and foremost, the thing that we have to address is the framing of this issue. So we have the mayor, London Breed, progressive mayor, who's done an absolutely terrible job in her office, letting drug use run rampant, crime is out of control, and businesses are fleeing in a way that we haven't seen since likely Detroit, honestly. And population is fleeing as well, yet the local news decides to frame this as, oh, those mean old cops not letting us have our open-air drug markets, and even the title of this ABC segment, which is Advocates Say Arresting San Fran Drug Users Could Cause More Overdose Deaths, is designed to shame London Breed and have her reverse course, even though this policy is clearly and obviously sensible. Now look, I'm somebody who understands that addiction is in fact an illness. I'm somebody who doesn't want necessarily you being addicted to result in you being sent to prison, but the idea that you just let these people out on the street use drugs in an open-air drug market, have them go mad and attack people, and that's the only solution, is absolute madness in my opinion. You have to do something, you have to clear these people out of the area, and if you want to set up like injection sites or something like that where they can go and be contained in a specific area, that's one thing, but you have to, for sure, enforce this stuff on people out on the street. I mean, think about it like this. This would be like an open container equivalent in a state when it comes to alcohol. And if you're going to ticket and cite people for drinking in public, I think open air drug use of fentanyl should also be qualified.
California Highway Patrol and the California National Guard are teaming up with the SFPD to get drug dealers and users off the streets.
Now, I also want to really harp on what you just heard there, which is the California Highway Patrol and the National Guard are teaming up to deal with this problem. I want you to think about that. Remember that. Think back to the Black Lives Matter riots when we were told by the mainstream media that invoking the National Guard for these major criminal justice related issues was somehow akin to fascism. This is not ongoing rioting, it is ongoing depravity and drug use and all that, yet the National Guard is being deployed, and nowhere in this are you hearing that London Breed is this evil, racist, fascist, monstrous person for doing so. You just have a bunch of whiners whining about how this is really mean and they don't like this and we should let the drug use go on in perpetuity, let these people harm themselves, because that's the progressive position.
Whether or not you want to call this the war on drugs, when you're prioritizing a carceral punitive approach to people who use drugs, it does not work.
Gary McCoy is with Health Right 360, one of the nonprofits the city relies on to help people get off the streets and into recovery.
So I want to talk about two specific things that you guys should think of when you're hearing this guy talk, and talk about how he's opposed to this policy. First and foremost, he's from an organization that, if law enforcement isn't doing this job, will be paid money by the city of San Francisco to do it in their place. So he is incentivized against these policies. Secondly, there was an image cut together on screen, and I will describe it for my podcast listeners. So during their cut to B-roll, they actually showed an addict laying down on the street, seemingly passed out, in front of a building which, if you will notice, is up for lease, an empty office building. If you wanted an individual image that will show you exactly what is going wrong with the state of San Francisco, it would be this image right here. Nobody is doing anything to get this man off the street. These people are saying, oh, we offer them drug rehab and all of that, but there is no incentive, there's no force mechanism to remove this person from this area. And what do we see in response? People fleeing the office buildings, businesses, and foot traffic are gone because nobody wants to walk through an area where there's sprawled out addicts who may or may not become violent at a moment's notice. And yet, this is what they cut to show you the poor person, but what I see is the impact of poor policy, and that person is also a victim of that poor policy.
So what happens when they leave after withdrawing for 4 hours is they're going to immediately go back out, they're going to find more drugs, except now they're going to be, for fear of being caught, they're going to be using more drugs. They're going to be using more at once so that they're not having to use as frequently out in the open.
So unsurprisingly, the guy who makes money off of the police not enforcing the law against these drug addicts is saying, I don't know if you guys know this, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if you stop paying me to do this job and you have law enforcement clear them up, then it's just going to make worse circumstances. Well, here's a response to that. How about when you arrest an addict, you don't just hold them for 4 hours and then release them? How about when you arrest an addict for public depravity or whatever they did on the streets of San Francisco? You tell them you either go into a rehab program, which is mandatory, or we're going to send you to jail. You need to have a carrot and stick approach, and the carrot is not being released onto the streets to use drugs again. That is rehabilitation and potentially getting your life together, and the stick is the prison system. It is sending somebody to jail for being a public nuisance, for trespassing on public property, for defecating, urinating, whatever you want in public, whatever you need to do in order to get these people off the streets. I am certain that if you ran the records and the warrants of enough of these people, enough of them would pop that you wouldn't have to attach a charge that seems minuscule in comparison. But the point is, you have to force these people to take control over their lives because they have clearly demonstrated an inability to take care of themselves.
It just brings a lot of fear and anxiety.
And Jackie Berlin knows this all too well. Her son Corey is on the streets addicted to fentanyl.
In some respects, it can be more dangerous for these addicts because they might take the first thing they run into, where normally they might take a little more precautions.
So again, my heart goes out to this woman who says that her son, who is addicted to fentanyl, might be harmed by this policy because when he gets out and he's tweaking, he might take something without checking or verifying it. Unfortunately, I have news for you. He's already not doing that. He's already in a grave state of trouble, and what you need is a forcible intervention to get him off the streets. Your organization, Mothers Against Drug Overdoses and Deaths, has not done anything for your son in particular. It's time for some hard truths, and the hard truth is he needs to be removed from the street and essentially forced into a rehabilitation program.
And while drug users are being offered treatment services in jail, so far the city says nobody's accepted it. Here's Mayor London Breed talking with ABC 7 News last week.
Out of those 25 people who were arrested, and even the ones who were released, the ones that didn't have warrants, none of them accepted the services that we were offering.
Yeah, you heard that correctly. Because San Francisco has no consequences for refusing these services, because they'll just plop you back out on the street to reuse, become addicted even further, commit crimes, and all of that again, they have a 0% uptake, over 25 in the last week on getting people off the streets and into a rehab program.
Still, the city plans to continue making arrests.
So there comes a time where if people are not accepting these services, we can't just allow what we see on our streets to continue.
Again, I 100% agree with London Breed. If she actually sticks to this and doesn't back down, like she will, 100%, if she actually mandates that these people go to treatment, puts them in a drug court or something like that, then I will be supportive of that. I will cheer that on. Even though she's a progressive Democrat, I will be on her side because my goal in this situation is, one, let's get the drug addicts off the streets because it is damaging to the community, driving people into poverty, and creating conditions more tolerant of crime. But two, I want to help these people that are addicted to drugs. I want them to stop using. I want them to stop going into decay. I don't want to do stories about how they're transitioning to that trank drug, which is actually actually turning them into zombies, flesh rotting and all, because that is not what we should do for the most vulnerable of our citizens. We shouldn't just allow people to destroy themselves and then have other people who are productive foot the bill for their medical expenses and live with the lower quality of life because these people won't take accountability for their own actions.
And Jackie Berlin says she'd like to see more action, making services more easily accessible.
Having resources available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because a lot of times, the times that someone is willing to go get help is, when they're cold at night or, not in the middle of the day.
I'm so tired of this. Look, I'm sorry, lady. I'm sorry about your son. I want to help your son. I want him off the streets, not only for his sake, but for the sake of the city of San Francisco, for the sake of our country. But enough with this. It's not accessible enough. Enough with this. Oh, we just need to spend more money on these programs that people aren't using. But never can we ever do the proper thing and ensure that they actually enter the program with any force of law. I'm tired of it all being an accessibility issue. It's all a public health crisis. No, it is also a criminal justice issue. It is a crime issue. And if you don't want to do straight up incarceration as a punishment, this needs to be the substitute punishment for these people being addicted to drugs and all of the ways that they have allowed their life to fall into disarray.
The mayor's been pumping the brakes on opening the hubs for months, citing legal concerns. Safe consumption sites are still illegal under federal law, but the mayor does support the New York model, where a nonprofit is operating 2 safe consumption sites using private donations, not taxpayer dollars, in theory making the city less liable.
Now look, we need to clear up what's going on with the federal government, because I would rather have these people in injection sites off the streets where you can meet them where they're at, where you can actually provide help. It's a better mechanism. They've tried it in Portugal, than having them sprawled out on the streets. But again, as I said before, and I'll say it again, having the injection site is one thing, but you have to clear up the litter off of the streets while these people are having that option available to them. You can't allow people to do whatever they want on the streets. I hate the needle exchange, which just ends up flooding the city with needles. You have to force them to go to the injection sites. You need to make it a criminal offense, serious criminal penalties if they do not comply for injecting the drugs on the street in an open air market after you open this. Now, they talk about later in this segment about how the federal government has restrictions on local and state governments running these operations. Those need to be lifted, but they may have a workaround with the nonprofits in these circumstances. However, we've seen this before where a local or state government will legalize something and then the feds will do a raid against them. So I understand the hesitation to just straight up open them, but this is a better solution. And again, right now, San Francisco is so bad, we're looking for the least bad options. And at least if we have this experiment in our country, we will know based on the example of San Francisco whether it works or not. Now look, I have said throughout the course of this video that I actually agree with London Breed, at least on a superficial level, on what she's trying to do, because I understand it. However, never forget that this is a radical left-wing progressive. Never forget that she doesn't actually believe this. She's just been pressed into this situation, much like a similar situation that we've talked about in terms of Portland, where they're hemorrhaging population. And don't believe that she's on your side, because when being questioned on this policy by somebody who, by the way, is trying to out progressive her, she decided to respond like this.
There's a lot of disagreement over San Francisco's policy of detaining drug users to get them into treatment.
Will you follow your own Department of Public Health's advice and end punitive policies specifically arresting and incarcerating drug users that increase fatal overdoses, or will you ramp up these strategies, ignoring the advice of public health experts and causing even more overdose deaths?
Mayor Breed.
Here we go, another white man who's talking about black and brown people as if you're the savior of those people and you speak for them.
You know, if it wasn't for the fact that the lives of these people on the streets of San Francisco are dependent on this woman, I would be rooting for her to fail. The first thing she does is jump to, "You're an evil white racist if you disagree with me," even as this guy is trying to outflank her on progressive policies, and she's clearly in the wrong. This is what people like London Breed always do. They always deflect to racism. They always cower in fear and can never address the issue. And to me, it's so absurd that she actually stumbled upon a decent policy. Obviously, it needs better force mechanisms in order to work, and hopefully she gets there soon, but immediately she deflects to, oh my god, you're an evil white racist, I'm such a victim, I'm the perpetual victim, never forget that I'm a bigger victim because I'm a stunning and brave woman of color. So yeah, while I support this policy, never mistake that for support for London Breed. While I hope that addicts actually are removed from the streets, and some of them get the help that they need, and some of them need to be locked up, let's be perfectly honest, I don't back this woman beyond anything unless she's saying things that I specifically agree with, because she is that person underneath anything that could look good on the surface. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the insanity of San Francisco and how somehow they might have a moment of clarity. Till next time.